Berber was an openly bisexual German dancer, actress and writer who starred in 25 films between 1918 to 1925, and she is best known for her roles in the films Eerie Tales, Different from the Others, Dr. Mabuse, and Around the World in 80 Days. Dubbed the Priestess of Depravity, Berber is as much remembered for her personal life as she is for her professional one, due to the shocking scandals that so often surrounded her and the provocative nature of her performances. However, whilst there was undeniably an erotic element to her work, Berber also suffered from drug addiction, and a lot of her art was a reflection of her own personal struggles and purposefully laced with social commentary. Berber is quoted as saying, "We dance death, illness, pregnancy, syphilis, madness, dying, infirmity, suicide, and nobody takes us seriously." Interestingly, Berber played the role of Elsa Sievers in the 1919 silent German film Different from the Others, which is a significant piece of work, not only in relation to Berber being a gay and lesbian icon, but for the fact that it's a cinematic landmark, since it is considered to contain one of the first sympathetic portrayals of homosexuality on screen ever, and directly challenged Germany's laws against homosexuality at the time. In the same year that Different from the Others was released, Berber married a screenwriter named Eberhard von Nathius to escape from poverty, but they divorced after she fell in love with a woman named Susie Winowski, a lesbian bar owner who became her manager as well as her lover. Berber soon became part of the Berlin lesbian scene, and allegedly had a brief affair with a young Marlene Dietrich during this period of her life. Berber's love affairs with women and her rejection of gender expectations and norms would often be featured in the tabloids as a source of scandal, earning Berber a controversial reputation and securing her status as a gay and lesbian icon. After her relationship with Winowski ended, Berber went on to take many other lovers and entered into 2 more marriages. Firstly to poet and dancer Sebastian Droster in 1922, who was her artistic partner and a homosexual, and then to an American dancer named Henry Shatar Hoffman in 1924, who was also a homosexual, making both of these marriages of the lavender variety. In 1928, Berber collapsed during a performance and died from tuberculosis a few months later when she was just 29 years old. It is thought that her drug abuse contributed to her passing away at such a young age. Anita Berber is an often forgotten or dismissed figure in Sapphic history, and she should be remembered for her unapologetic resistance to conformity and fearless soul-bearing contributions to the arts. Alanna Nazimova was an openly bisexual, Russian-born American actress, producer, director, and screenwriter. In 1917, Nazimova secured a 5-year film contract with Metro Pictures at $13,000 a week, which at the time made her the highest-paid film actress in the world. She is best known for her roles in the films Four Brides, Out of the Fog, Camille, The Red Lantern, and Escape, as well as for being the first woman to start her own film production company called Nazimova Productions in 1917, making her a female pioneer in cinema. Nazimova was born as Mariam Adez Adelaide Levington, but when her father insisted she use a stage name rather than risk disgracing him with her real name, at a violin recital she was scheduled to perform at as a child, she came up with the name Alanna Nazimova, Alanna being diminutive of Adelaida and Nazimova, after the name of a heroine in a Russian novel called Children of the Streets. Nazimova is a particularly notable Sapphic figure from old Hollywood because she was the one who coined the term sewing circle, a term I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, but if not, it's a phrase that was used to describe the underground community of lesbian and bisexual women who would meet up with one another for lunch, conversation and connection during Hollywood's golden age. And Nazimova would often hold these sewing circles at her home, a mansion on Sunset Boulevard, which she named named The Garden of Allah. Alongside this, Nazimova would also entertain galas at a lesbian bar she owned named Mary's on the Sunset Strip too. Interestingly, Nazimova first married a man named Sergei Golovin in 1899, but after a series of events that saw her making her way to America to pursue a career in Hollywood without him, she began to maintain a lavender marriage in 1912 with the British actor Charles Bryant, who played her co-star in the film War Brides, to make her public image more socially acceptable. However, throughout this period, Nazimova was still officially married to her first husband Golovin, and she did not actually divorce him until 1923. In 1925, Bryant decided he wanted to actually get married to a woman named Marjorie Gilhooly, which led the press to uncover the fact that Bryant's marital status had been listed as single on his marriage license throughout his time with Nazimova, and the revelation that Nazimova and Bryant's marriage had been a sham severely damaged Nazimova's career. Nazimova openly pursued relationships with women throughout her Hollywood occupation, and it's believed that 4 of her most notable female lovers were actress Eva Le Gallienne, lesbian director Dorothy Arzner, poet and playwright Mercedes D'Acosta, a woman who was also famously involved with Greta Garbo and everyone else, if rumours are to be believed, and Jean Acker and Natasha Rambova, who interestingly were both the wives of the same man, Rudolph Valentino, Nazimova's co-star in the film Camille. And yes, he was arrested for bigamy. Baby, you thought Bet cheating on Tina with the carpenter was wild. Old Hollywood is the L word on steroids. Eventually, Nazimova ended up living together with her long-term lover, Catherine Glesker Marshall, and after falling into financial difficulties due to lawsuits, health issues and dwindling popularity, Nazimova died more or less penniless in a rented apartment above the garage at her own former estate in 1945. Similar to Anita Berber, Alanna Nazimova is an often forgotten figure in Sapphic history, and she should be remembered not only for being a female pioneer in filmmaking, but for her work in providing safe spaces for lesbian and bisexual women to connect with each other during a deeply homophobic period of time. Katherine Hepburn was an American actress whose career as a Hollywood leading lady took off in the 1930s and lasted for more than 6 decades, earning her 4 Academy Awards for Best Actress. Hepburn is best known for her roles in the films Little Women, Bringing Up Baby, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, as well as for her rejection of gender norms, unique beauty, and fiery personality. Hepburn's love of gender non-conforming attire became signature to her image, and famously, when the costume department at RKO once stole her slacks, which they considered to be too masculine, Hepburn walked around the studio in her underwear in response, refusing to put clothes on until she got her slacks back, a story which highlights her strong and defiant character. Hepburn was known for being a very private person who distanced herself from celebrity life, rarely appeared in public, and refused interviews for much of her career. To give you an idea of just how fiercely she protected her privacy, she once wrestled a camera out of a photographer's hand when he took her picture without asking. She's the Bette Porter of her generation. However, what we do know about Hepburn is that she was briefly married to the socialite Ludlow Ogden Smith, but by the time her Hollywood career took off, they were divorced and she was free to do as she liked. And allegedly, what Hepburn liked to do was women. There is speculation that her love interests included Laura Harding, Nancy Hamilton, Frances Rich, and Phyllis Wilbourn. Wilbourn being perhaps the most significant of all her relationships. Having stayed together with Hepburn for nearly 30 years, Wilbourn was buried in the Hepburn family plot upon her passing, and was also described by Hepburn as my Alice B. Toklas. Alice B. Toklas was famously known as the lesbian lover and lifelong partner of author Gertrude Stein, so the writing is very much on the wall there, no pun intended. Alongside this, Hepburn also created a portrait of Wilbourn and kept it in her home. And whilst it's true that Wilbourn also had her own apartment, which she allegedly shared with another woman for a period of time, all of the above factors collectively paint a picture again no pun intended, of what was undoubtedly an incredibly significant relationship between Wilbourn and Hepburn. Historians might say they were good friends, but the Sapphic underground will not. In a 2017 documentary, columnist Liz Smith, who was a close friend of Hepburn, attested that Hepburn was a lesbian, and the following extract from the book Catherine the Great, Secrets of a Lifetime, revealed by Darwin Porter, reveals some of the intense lesbian drama Hepburn was allegedly involved in. It reads, "Very early into her affair with Katherine Hepburn, Laura Harding became sickeningly jealous of Kate's devoted attention to Hope Williams. One night, after rehearsals, Kate and Laura had a big fight in Kate's dressing room. That was overheard by the stagehands. 'If you want and expect monogamy from me,' Kate shouted, 'you've got the wrong woman. I will go after any woman or man I want, and there's nothing you can do about it.' Laura had stormed out of the theatre, vowing never to speak to Kate again, although the two women were planning to drive with Luddy and Jack to Fenwick to meet Kate's parents that weekend. Hepburn was also documented as having had a 20-year-long relationship with the actor Spencer Tracy, and while she was unarguably devoted to him, the true nature of their relationship came into question when, years later, a gay rights activist, Larry Kramer, proclaimed that Hepburn and Spencer Tracy were both gay. They were publicly paired together by the studio. Everyone in Hollywood knows this is true." A similar claim is also made in the book Full Service by Scotty Bowers, in which Bowers, who was known for matchmaking and procuring sex workers for actors in Hollywood's golden age, describes how he arranged male partners for Spencer Tracy and even slept with him himself. It's gay inception. To conclude, the lesbian Katherine Hepburn cinematic universe is a mysterious and multi-layered place. The only thing we can really be sure of is that, goddamn, that woman knew how to rock a high-waist trouser, and perhaps that's all the evidence we need. Barbara Stanwyck was an American actress, model and dancer whose career impressively spanned from the 1920s to the 1980s. She is best known for her roles in the films Double Indemnity, The Lady Eve, Meet John Doe, and Stella Dallas. Born as Ruby Catherine Stevens, Stanwyck had a turbulent and troubled upbringing, with her mother dying and her father mysteriously disappearing when she was still a child. As a result of this, she was placed into foster care but ran away at the age of 14 to join her sister Mildred to work as a showgirl. This rocky start to Stanwyck's life is what instilled such a strong work ethic in her, and in later years she was quoted as saying of her work, "I just wanted to survive and eat and have a nice coat." Stanwyck's big break came at 16 years old with the Ziegfeld Follies, where she made a name for herself choreographing dance numbers at the Texas Guinan Gay and Lesbian Speakeasy, and this is where she met the famous director Willard Mack. It was Mack who gave Stanwyck the idea to change her name from Ruby Stevens to Barbara Stanwyck. Barbara was taken from the name of her character in the film The Noose, and Stanwyck was taken from another actress who was also in the production. Interestingly, Stanwyck played the role of the very first out lesbian to be shown in American cinema, Jo Courtney, in the 1962 film Walk on the Wild Side, which earned her a lesbian following at the time. Stanwyck was married twice, and both marriages were suspected to be of the lavender variety. In 1928, Stanwyck married Frank Fay, an alcoholic and alleged gay man. Right after their marriage ceremony, Stanwyck left for Hollywood and resumed a 6-month tour, eventually divorcing him in 1935. In 1939, at the encouragement of MGM Studio, Stanwyck married Robert Taylor. Reportedly, Taylor refused to kiss Stanwyck for the wedding photographers, and after the wedding, Stanwyck returned to her Northridge ranch and Taylor home to his mother. The couple lived separate lives, and during their divorce, Taylor revealed to his friends that Stanwyck was a lesbian and that they had never slept together. Stanwyck was allegedly romantically involved with Greta Garbo, Garbo, Marlene Dietrich, Tula Bankhead, and Joan Crawford. Interestingly, Crawford and Stanwick once had adjoining properties in Brentwood, and reportedly Stanwick would go over there when her husband at the time, Frank Fay, would get drunk and abusive towards her. Helen Ferguson, who was Stanwick's live-in publicist for many years, is quoted as saying that there is no doubt in my mind that Joan and Barbara were intimate on more than one occasion. And usually I would say to take this with a pinch of salt. However, Stanwick's most significant relationship was actually with Helen Ferguson, and it was one that lasted almost 30 years. Ferguson was herself married twice, but was left widowed both times, and she stayed by Stanwick's side for most of her career, even living with her through her 2 lavender marriages. Oh my god, and they were roommates. Claudette Colbert was an American actress whose career spanned from the 1920s to the 1980s, and she is best known for her roles in the films Cleopatra, Since You Went Away, and It Happened One Night. It Happened One Night earning her an Academy Award for Best Actress. Born Emile Claudette Chauchois, Colbert was married twice in her life, and both marriages were suspected to be lavender ones. The first marriage was to film actor and director Norman Foster, and the two lived apart, never sharing a home together in Hollywood, with Colbert instead choosing to live with her mother in Los Angeles. The second marriage was to Dr. Joel Pressman, who acted as Colbert's social companion at industry and social events. By the mid-1950s, when Colbert relocated to New York City and then to her estate in Barbados, she and Pressman lived essentially apart. Although Colbert always denied being bisexual or a lesbian, there has long been rumours that she indulged in love affairs with Katherine Hepburn, Joan Crawford and Marlene Dietrich. However, her most significant and well-documented relationship was with the openly lesbian artist Verna Hull in the 1950s. Colbert and Hull rented a home together in New York City and also had neighbouring vacation homes in Barbados. Their relationship ended after the death of Colbert's second husband, Pressman, and apparently it ended on bad terms, but it's unclear as to why. When Colbert passed away in 1996, she left her entire estate to another woman named Helen O'Hagan, whom she instructed in her will to be treated as her spouse, which translated in historian speak, of course, means as her good friend. Tula Bankhead was an openly bisexual American actress whose career spanned from the 1910s through to the 1960s. She is best known for her roles in the films Lifeboat, Fanatic, A Royal Scandal and Faithless, as well as for her colourful character and even more colourful love life. Bankhead only married once to actor John Emery in 1937, but filed for divorce from him in 1941. The day it was finalised, Bankhead told a reporter, "You can definitely quote me as saying there will be no plans for a remarriage." Bankhead was famous for her scandalous sexual exploits and love affairs. She was vocal about taking female lovers as well as male ones, had a total of 4 abortions in her life, and MI5 tried to investigate allegations that she had been seducing schoolboys at Eton College. Although it should be noted that MI5 failed to find any evidence at all to support these allegations. Bankhead described herself as ambisextrous instead of bisexual, but would reportedly also approach strangers at parties and say, "I'm a lesbian, what do you do to break the ice?" She is rumoured to have had love affairs with Greta Garbo, Hattie McDaniel, Beatrice Lilly, Alanna Nazimova, Blythe Daly, Mercedes D'Acosta, although she was also rumoured to dislike Mercedes D'Acosta. Then again, the dislike could be tied into lesbian drama, who knows. Billie Holiday, Patsy Kelly, which was confirmed by Patsy Kelly herself, so not so much a rumour as it is a fact. Estelle Winwood, Marlene Dietrich and Eva Le Gallienne, with the Le Gallienne being her first. Bankhead also famously said of her sexuality, "My father warned me about men and booze, but he never mentioned a word about women and cocaine. And I do kind of want that printed on a mug, even though I don't know my father and I don't do cocaine. Just cups of tea, but no judgments here." However, despite her seemingly insatiable appetite, Bankhead's approach to and openness about her sexuality were actually shock tactics designed to incite controversy and get noticed. It's also worth noting that she had a lot of issues around poor self-esteem and needing attention, which stemmed from her childhood. And that, alongside her struggles with alcoholism and drug addiction, played into her controversial relationship with sex. So Bankhead is often framed as a carefree, good time girl and life of the party. But in truth, it's well documented that she was a deeply sad and troubled woman who never received the help and care she needed for her mental health and found temporary solace in drugs, alcohol and sex instead. Controversy aside, Bankhead was actually an incredibly good soul whose heart was in the right place. She adopted foster children from abroad who she regularly corresponded with, sending them money as well as generous gifts. She strongly opposed racism and segregation in the USA and helped families escape the Spanish Civil War and World War II. Perhaps the most legendary thing about Bankhead of all is that she publicly called William Harrison Hayes a little prick. And dear listeners, have truer words ever been spoken? Anna May Wong was an American actress and fashion icon whose career spanned from the 1920s to the 1960s. She is best known for her roles in the films Shanghai Express, Song, Piccadilly, and The Toll of the Sea. Born Wong Lu-song, Wong was the first Chinese-American film star in Hollywood and the first Chinese-American actress to gain international recognition. Wong was a trailblazer for Asian-American actresses in Hollywood, and through her work and publicity, she helped to humanize Chinese Americans to American audiences and offer a source of visibility and representation during a period of rampant racism and discrimination. It's well documented that Wong often lost out on roles for Chinese characters to white actresses, was paid less than white actresses and white actors, and less than Asian male actors, and also faced criticism and sexism, not only from a largely misogynistic and racist American society, but from the Chinese government and press for her on-screen presence too. It's important to highlight that Wong and many other women of colour working in the film industry weren't just dealing with racism, they were dealing with sexism as well, often from within their own communities. Wong never married, and when asked by reporters if she had marriage plans, Wong replied with, "No, I am wedded to my art." A queen's response. I need that printed on a shirt so badly. It is thought that Wong was bisexual, and there is speculation that she was involved with Cecil Cunningham, Alanna Nazimova, and most famously Marlene Dietrich. Baby, I have two words for you: Shanghai Express. The chemistry was chemistrying. However, it's important to note here that there's never been any concrete evidence of Wong having a romantic relationship with another woman, and the speculation around her sexuality mainly stems from Wong's image as other, the fact that she never married, and in the case of Dietrich, photographs which suggest an intimacy between the two, with the most famous one showing Wong pouring liquor into Dietrich's mouth. God, I wish that were me. In any case, at the time, these rumours caused significant damage to Wong's career. But despite that and everything else Wong was up against, she still managed to create a long and impressive body of work that secured her legacy as a Hollywood icon and paved the way for future generations of Asian American actresses too. And she was hot. Let's just all be honest. She was hot, and her sense of fashion was fire. Anna May Wong, serving both Asian visibility and Vogue in the old Hollywood category. Joan Crawford was an American dancer and actress whose career spanned from the 1920s to the 1970s. Born Lucille Fay Lesueur, Crawford starred in more than 80 films, and she is best known for her work in Mildred Pierce, which earned her an Academy Award for Best Actress, and for the horror classic Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. A well-known quote by MGM screenwriter Frederica Segor-Mas goes, "No one decided to make Joan Crawford a star. Joan Crawford became a star because Joan Crawford decided to become a star." Crawford was married 4 times. First to actor and screenwriter Douglas Fairbanks Jr. in 1929, then to actor and director Francois Tone in 1935, then to actor Philip Terry in 1942, and finally with Pepsi-Cola CEO Alfred Still in 1955. Crawford also adopted 4 children. Her daughter Christina as a single mother in 1940, her son Christopher while married to Philip Terry, and after the death of her last husband, identical twins Kathy and Cynthia in 1947. Now, Crawford is rumoured to have had Sapphic love affairs with Barbara Stanwick, which we discussed earlier, Claudette Colbert, and Dorothy Arzner. However, whilst it's true that Crawford wanted Arzner to direct one of her films, she also claimed that Arzner made her uncomfortable. Crawford is quoted as saying about Arzner, "I knew she found me sexually desirable, and in a way I felt bad for her, but I swear she just made my flesh crawl." Which I should say goes beyond a polite denial about that rumour and pretty much puts it to bed. The real reason there's been such persistent speculation about Crawford's sexuality stems from the fact that in the 1978 edition of Mummy Dearest, a memoir and expose of Crawford by her daughter Christina, there is a passage in the book where Christina relays a story that was told to her by her former nanny, in which the nanny, who was an unnamed source, claimed that Crawford would drunkenly come into her bedroom at night and invite her to have a drink with her, and then later on propositioned her, which prompted the nanny to eventually leave the job because she was so uncomfortable. Christina then goes on to say in the book, "It didn't shock me because I already knew about my mother's lesbian proclivities, and this only added to what I had already figured out for myself." However, this line was an invention of the publisher William Morrow and was not in the original manuscript by Christina Crawford. We know this because when the 20th anniversary edition of Mummy Dearest was republished in 1998, the preface in it states that this edition contains the original manuscript, much of which William Morrow never actually published. And this is important to note because the line about Crawford's lesbian proclivities is nowhere to be found in the 20th anniversary edition, nor is it in any of the editions of Mummy Dearest that came afterwards. What Christina says in the original manuscript, in response to the claims from her former nanny, is that "It didn't shock me because I'd already seen so much my mother had done that having someone tell me they also thought she was a lesbian made little difference to me at this point." And this line says something very, very different from what is said in the invented line in the William Morrow publication. The original manuscript doesn't confirm anything about Crawford's lesbianism at all. However, because that original fictitious invention by William Morrow was thought to be Christina's own words, a lot of biographers and journalists went on to repeat what was essentially a lie, which is why the rumours about Crawford's supposed lesbianism or bisexuality have been so persistent throughout the years. Interestingly, when Greta Garbo and Crawford met as co-stars for the filming of Grand Hotel, in which they didn't have any scenes together, Garbo famously took Crawford's face in her hands and said, "What a pity, our first picture together and we don't work with each other. I'm sorry, you have a marvellous face." Crawford later commented that, "If there was ever a time in my life when I might have been a lesbian, that was it. The power of Garbo, everyone. The power of Garbo." So, all things taken into consideration, whilst it's possible that Crawford may have had 1 or 2 sapphic tendencies or affairs, the most plausible being with Barbara Stanwyck, as discussed earlier, there's actually little to no real evidence that she liked women romantically at all. In fact, a lot of what she's said points to the opposite, and the rumours that have persisted about her sexuality really do stem from a fictitious invention from a deceitful publisher. Josephine Baker was an American-born French dancer, actress and singer whose career spanned from the 1920s to the 1970s, and she is best known for her roles in the films Zuzu, Princess Tam Tam and Siren of the Tropics, as well as her unique on-stage performance and costume styles, most notably her banana dress in Danse Sauvage. Born Frida Josephine McDonald, Baker started off performing in clubs in New York from a young age, and soon moved on to Broadway, Broadway. However, her big break came when she made her way to France in the 1920s and became one of the most popular music hall entertainers in the country, achieving star billing at the Folies Bergère. In 1927, Baker played the lead role of Pepito in the French silent film Siren of the Tropics, making her the first African-American woman to star in a motion picture, as well as one of the first African-American entertainers to achieve acclaim both in movies and on the stage. During World War II, after her adopted country of France fell to Nazi forces, Baker took up espionage, using her celebrity status to capture information for the French resistance. After its liberation, Baker returned to her adopted city of Paris and was so horrified by the terrible conditions that many French citizens endured after the Nazi occupation that she sold pieces of her jewellery and other valuables to raise money to buy food and coal for them. Baker later returned to America, where she was confronted with intense racism and segregation. As an act of resistance, she often refused to perform to segregated audiences, often forcing club owners to integrate for her shows. In 1963, Baker was also one of the few female speakers at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, a political demonstration that advocated for the civil and economic rights of African Americans. And Baker's speech honored other female civil rights activists and detailed her life as a black woman in the United States and abroad. Baker was married to 4 different men throughout her lifetime. Firstly to Willie Wells in 1919, secondly to Willie Baker, whose last name she kept, in 1921, thirdly to Jean Leon in 1937, and fourthly to Jo Bouillon in 1947. However, it's also well documented that Baker was bisexual and had several female lovers throughout her life. Her son, Jean-Claude Baker, and co-author Chris Chase state in the book Josephine, the Hungry Heart that Baker was involved in numerous affairs with women, both whilst single and married, and mention 6 of her female lovers by name: Clara Smith, Evelyn Shepherd, Bessie Allison, Ada Smith, and Mildred Smallwood, all of whom were African-American women she met whilst touring on the black performing circuit early in her career. She was also reportedly involved with the French writer Colette and Mexican artist Frida Kahlo. Get it, girl! Josephine Baker, trailblazing and tail chasing. We love a productive woman. Louise Brooks was an American actress whose career spanned between the 1920s and 1930s, and she is best known for her roles in the films Beggars of Life, Pandora's Box, and Diary of a Lost Girl. After being spotted by a producer at Paramount Pictures named Walter Wagner, Brooks signed a contract with the studio and began to star in both silent and early talking productions. However, due to how abusive and misogynistic the film industry was at the time, Brooks became increasingly disillusioned by Hollywood, and the final straw came in 1929, when she began to socialize with wealthy and famous people such as William Randolph Hearst and his mistress Marion Davies. Brooks' association with Hearst and Davies resulted in her becoming close friends with Davies' lesbian niece, Peppy Lederer. Whilst partying with Lederer, Brooks and Lederer allegedly had a brief romantic affair, and at some point during their friendship, Hearst and Davies were made aware of Lederer's lesbianism. This, combined with Lederer's severe drug addiction, led to Hearst arranging for Lederer to be committed to a mental institution against her will. Several days after this, Lederer jumped to her death from the hospital window. This tragedy, combined with being denied a promise raised by Paramount, was what finally pushed Brooks to leave Hollywood and seek out a career in Europe instead, which, as it turns out, was a wise career move for her and is what secured her legacy as an actress. Brooks was married twice, firstly to director Edward Sutherland and secondly to Deering Davis, but ultimately she abandoned both marriages and is quoted as saying, "As a matter of fact, I've never been in love." And if I had loved a man, could I have been faithful to him? Could he have trusted me beyond a closed door? I doubt it. Brooks' relationship with her sexuality was complicated. She often fostered speculation about her attraction to women and even admitted to love affairs with them, including a one-night stand with Greta Garbo, whom she described as masculine but a charming and tender lover. However, despite all of this, Brooks considered herself neither a lesbian nor bisexual, and she is quoted as saying, "When I am dead, I believe that film writers will fasten on the story that I am a lesbian. I've done lots to make it believable. All my women friends have been lesbians. But that is one point upon which I agree positively with Christopher Isherwood. There is no such thing as bisexuality. Ordinary people, although they may accommodate themselves for reason of whoring or marriage, are one-sexed. Out of curiosity, I had 2 affairs with girls. They did nothing for me." So according to Brooks' own words, she was never in love with any men and women did nothing for her either. However, with the pressures of the film industry, heteronormativity, rape culture, and internalized and systemic homophobia, like a lot of other women from this period, it's not surprising that she had a complicated or contradictory relationship with her sexuality. It's possible Brooks said these things as a ruse to protect her privacy, or it's possible she meant what she was saying and genuinely never felt an attachment to anyone. But in any case, despite a short-lived career and her personal struggles, Brooks left a lasting impression on cinema through her individuality, rejection of convention, and dedication to her craft. And she remains a cultural icon of the flapper era to this day. Greta Garbo was a Swedish-American actress who is regarded as one of the greatest screen actresses of all time. Born Greta Lovisa Gustafsson, Garbo's career spanned from the 1920s to the 1940s, and for most of it she was the highest paid actor at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Garbo is most known for her roles in the films Anna Christie, Queen Christina, Camille, and Ninotchka. However, despite all of her success, Garbo worked on her last film, Two-Faced Woman, in 1941, and officially retired from acting towards the end of the 1940s, pursuing a more private life instead. 4 years before her death, Garbo told Swedish biographer Sven Broman, "I was tired of Hollywood. I did not like my work. There were many days when I had to force myself to go to the studio. I really wanted to live another life." And this reveals both her disillusionment with and the reason for her early departure from the film industry. Despite being a fiercely private person, Garbo's bisexuality was well documented. The only time she ever came close to being married was to a man named John Gilbert, who allegedly proposed to Garbo numerous times. She did eventually accept one of his proposals, but ended up backing out just before the wedding, and has said of her relationship with him, "I was in love with him, but I froze. I was afraid he would tell me what to do and boss me. I always wanted to be the boss." Garbo referred to her love affairs with women as exciting secrets, and she allegedly kept exciting secrets with Lillian Tashman, Louise Brooks, as previously discussed, and Swedish aristocrat Countess Ingrid Wachtmeister. However, her most significant and well-documented relationship was with Mercedes D'Acosta. D'Acosta and Garbo were first introduced in 1931 by author Silke Vertil, and D'Acosta soon became besotted with Garbo. There's actually reason to believe that there was a love triangle of sorts between the 3 women, with Garbo at the centre, because Garbo had already developed deep feelings for Vertil before meeting D'Acosta. And after going away on holiday with D'Acosta, Garbo came back and seduced Vertil, who then described the seduction in a letter to her husband. The letter details how Garbo had decorated her house with white gardenias, which are a symbol of secret love, served champagne, and played Sapphic songs for Vertil on the gramophone. According to Vertil, all of this was a gigantic temptation apparatus, and she concluded in her letter, "So we were together, it was harmonious and beautiful." It's well documented that D'Acosta was infatuated with Garbo, but it's less clear if Garbo returned those feelings for her. There's a letter we're going to get to later in the video pertaining to another actress, which details how Garbo gave D'Acosta both a hard time and an STD from sleeping around, which is rather revealing, but in any case, Garbo and D'Acosta would be together for lengthy periods and then they would be apart for lengthy periods. And in the periods which they were apart, Garbo wouldn't even acknowledge D'Acosta. D'Acosta wrote of their relationship, "To try and explain my real feeling for Greta would be impossible, since I really do not understand myself. I do know that I have built up in my emotions a person that does not exist. My mind sees the real person, a Swedish servant girl with a face touched by God, only interested in money, her health, sex, food and sleep. And yet her face tricks my mind and my spirit, builds her up into something that fights with my brain. I do love her, but I love the person I have created and not the person who is real. We've all been there, babes. We've all been there." And this extract offers an interesting insight into D'Acosta's relationship with Garbo, and suggested that D'Acosta was aware of the fact that she often projected her own personal ideas and desires onto Garbo, and was significantly more emotionally attached to her, or at least to the idea of her, than Garbo was to her. However, the two women remained friends for almost 30 years, during which time Garbo wrote D'Acosta 181 letters, cards and telegrams, some of which are now at the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia if anyone is curious to see them. Garbo and D'Acosta's relationship ended when D'Acosta published her memoirs, and not only mentioned Garbo in it, but also included a photo she had taken of Garbo topless on their trip to the High Sierras together. Given Garbo's need for privacy, this did not go down well at all, and effectively ended things between them. Garbo was also famous for her masculinity and gender nonconformity. Outside of work, she rejected makeup and liked to dress in quote-unquote male attire, such as slacks, Oxford shoes, sweaters, tailored shirts and ties. And she often referred to herself as a fellow and sometimes signed her letters Harry or Harry Boy. The reason for this is because Garbo existed in a period where masculinity was strictly associated with men, and a lot of women who were masculine or drawn towards masculinity internalized that association, and as a result would often describe themselves as being male or like a male. Vita Sackville-West is another good example of a gender non-conforming woman in the early 20th century who did this as well. Gender roles and stereotypes were so deeply ingrained in Western society, it was hard to fathom or accept a woman who embraced masculinity instead of femininity as a woman at all. I wish I could say this way of thinking is a thing of the past, but having recently read certain articles about how Garbo's gender nonconformity made her a man during my research, oh my god, it is not. In any case, Garbo's ethereal beauty, mystique, rejection of gender norms, and captivating on-screen presence make her one of the most unique and fascinating Sapphic figures from old Hollywood. Clara Bow was an American actress whose career spanned from the 1920s to the 1930s, and she is best known for her roles in the films Wings, Man Trap, The Wild Party, and It. It being the film that brought her worldwide recognition and earned her the nickname The It Girl. Famous for adopting the flapper aesthetic and a penchant for partying, Bow became to be a personification of the Roaring Twenties. However, despite making 46 silent films and 11 talkies, Bow's personal life far eclipsed her professional one. In her younger life, Bow famously had 2 or 3 broken engagements, but only ever married once in 1931 to actor Rex Bell, who she had 2 children with. Due to dealing with severe mental health issues in her later life, Bow ended up being admitted to hospital, where she was diagnosed with schizophrenia. However, Bow rejected this diagnosis and left the hospital, choosing not to return to her family family, but to live by herself until her death in 1965 instead. It's well documented that Bo suffered a lot of trauma as a child, from being subjected to abuse from her severely mentally ill mother, and later on from becoming victim to the abusive nature of the film industry and misogynistic media mill of the early 20th century, all of which were contributing factors to her mental breakdown and early departure from Hollywood. Now, Bo was largely rumoured to have had both male and female lovers before her marriage to Rex Bell. However, there is no substantial evidence that Bo was bisexual. She was both one of the biggest stars in the 1920s and a sex symbol, and that was the perfect cocktail and incentive for the media to create and sell fictitious stories about her to a curious and invested public. These stories included bisexuality, lesbianism, promiscuity, alcoholism, gambling, drug use, and at their most extreme, bestiality and incest. Now, there is evidence to suggest that Bo did indulge in things such as affairs with married men and gambling, but a lot of the more outlandish or derogatory rumours can be traced back to a fallout between Bo and a woman named Daisy DeVoe. DeVoe was originally Bo's hairstylist, but eventually became her close friend and secretary. And at first, their relationship was a positive thing, because over the 2 years that DeVoe worked with Bo, she established a private savings account that only they could access, in order to keep Bo's earnings out of the reach of the parasitic men in her life, which included her father, who raped and financially exploited her, Paramount executives and boyfriends, which included Bo's future husband Rex Bell. But unfortunately, DeVoe would end up being just as parasitic as the men she was trying to protect Bo from. The financial arrangement between Bo and DeVoe began to cause tension between Bo and Bell, and this escalated in Bell telling Bo that he would leave her if she did not fire DeVoe. This sent DeVoe into an angry panic, and she absconded with Bo's checking book, cash, and items of expensive jewellery to keep them out of Bell's hands. DeVoe then firstly visited Bo's attorney, demanding $125,000 in exchange for keeping certain information she possessed about Bo away from the press. And then secondly, she made her way to Bo's house to offer to return all that she had taken in exchange for an assurance that she could have her old job back. I don't know why she thought doing this would have a good result. Understandably hurt by the blackmail and betrayal, Bo called the police on DeVoe and then sued her for damages. This resulted in a feud between the two and led to Bo's personal life being aired in court, and with DeVoe trying to frame her as a vindictive drunk who took advantage of married men and lived a life of grand excess, drinking and partying nearly every night. This was not received well by the public due to the Great Depression happening at the time, in which excessive spending was frowned upon, as were women who were not chaste, married, monogamous, and heterosexual. As stated earlier, there is evidence to suggest that DeVoe's accusations of Bo drinking and engaging in affairs had some weight to them. However, fact escalated to a place of fiction when a man named Frederick Gurnau, who headed a newspaper called the Coast Reporter, began to publish a series of articles that accused Bo of promiscuity, exhibitionism, incest, lesbianism, bestiality, drug addiction, alcoholism, and venereal disease, alongside a 60-page document called Clara's Secret Love Life as Told by Daisy, a pamphlet full of moral scoldings about her alleged behaviour. However, much of the chronology in Gurnau's articles and pamphlet don't line up to the actual events of Bo's life, and several of the stories he published about Bo have since been disproved. On top of this, Daisy DeVoe, the pamphlet's alleged main source, sued Gurnau and denied having any relation to him at all, which, if she's to be believed, discredits his publications even further. Today, it's been proven his articles have little to no validity, but at the time, because Bo's image was that of a hedonistic, sexually alluring party girl, combined with what was exposed about her at the DeVoe trial, trial. People believed these articles and she was relentlessly vilified for it. The controversy resulted in the Riverside Board of Censorship banning one of Beau's films because of notoriety, and the end of her career with Paramount Pictures due to the toll the trial and the relentless harassment from the press took on her mental health. So it's difficult to separate fact from fiction where Beau's love life is concerned because of just how much the rumours escalated. And there's no real substantial evidence anywhere to support the theory that Beau was bisexual. A very popular source of speculation is that Beau was involved with lesbian director Dorothy Arzner, who she worked with on two of her most popular films, Get Your Man and The Wild Party. But this speculation again links back to DeVoe, who claimed in relation to Arzner that Beau was insanely jealous of the girls upon whom she lavished her love and questioned them minutely as to their other companions and how they passed their time away from her. Again, you have to question DeVoe's motivation for sharing this and take into consideration the ongoing resentment she had towards Beau. Lesbian relationships or a suggestion of lesbianism were not only a scandal in that period, but something which had negative associations. And pinning negative association to Beau's name is something DeVoe was purposefully trying to do. Even more complicated is Beau's relationship with DeVoe herself, which also became a source of speculation since it deteriorated in large part due to Beau's engagement to Rex Bell. DeVoe remarked harshly about Bell, saying he was poisoning her employer's mind against her. And when you take into consideration how strongly Bell wanted to get rid of DeVoe, it's very telling of an animosity between the two. It's true the contention between them may have been purely related to financial gain on both parts, but it's not outside the realm of possibility that it may also have been related to DeVoe being competition for Bell in Beau's affections, especially considering how close the two were. In any case, what happened to Clara Beau highlights the double standards and rampant misogyny that actresses had to contend with, and still do today to a degree, from the film industry and press. Beau was encouraged by the studio to adopt and promote a sexually alluring image to generate interest and ticket sales, but any suggestion of her actually being sexually active, especially as an independent woman, was scorned and punished because it challenged widely accepted misogynistic notions about how women were supposed to be, namely chaste, monogamous, and under the control of a man. It's true that Beau did engage in some negative behaviours, such as affairs with married men, which didn't exactly help her case, but even still, those affairs were always framed as solely her fault. She was the evil seductress and the married men were the victims who were never held accountable for their infidelity, even though they were equally as, if not more so considering they were the ones betraying a significant other, guilty. In the end, Beau's legacy as a beloved artist and cultural icon surpassed the attempts to sabotage her, but more important than the image of Beau that the Hollywood machine created was the woman behind it, one who was not defined by her demons but persisted despite them, and whose humanness highlighted the inhumane nature of the Hollywood machine. To conclude with Beau's own words, "They yell at me to be dignified, but what are dignified people like? The people who are held up as examples of me, they are snobs. Frightful snobs. I'm a curiosity in Hollywood. I'm a big freak because I'm myself." Marlene Dietrich was a German actress whose career spanned from the 1920s to the 1970s. Fluent in German, English and French, Dietrich is best known for her roles in the films Witness for the Prosecution, The Blue Angel, Destry Rides Again, Shanghai Express, and The Scarlet Empress. Born as Marie Magdalena Dietrich, Dietrich started off her career in show business as a chorus girl in Berlin in the 1920s, and soon began picking up small film roles here and there. Her big break came when she scored a role in the German film The Blue Angel, directed by Joseph von Sternberg. Sternberg was a man who had connections to Hollywood, and it was through her relationship with Sternberg that Dietrich ended up signing with Paramount Pictures, a move which launched her into international stardom. Dietrich often defied gender roles and expectations both on and off the screen. She took up boxing in Berlin at Sabri Mahish's boxing studio when it first opened to women in the late 1920s, frequently donned quote-unquote male attire, once stating, "I am at heart a gentleman," and even turned up to the 1932 premiere of The Sign of the Cross wearing a tuxedo suit, causing quite the scandal. Speaking of tuxedos, Dietrich is also famously remembered for the iconic scene in the 1930 production Morocco, where she donned a top hat and tails and suggestively kissed another woman. An incredibly daring move at the time, and an example of the creative leeway films had in pre-code Hollywood. Another interesting Sapphic cinematic connection is that Dietrich's first colorized film, released in 1936, was called The Garden of Allah, which interestingly also happened to be the name of Alanna Nazimova's famous estate, which she first purchased in 1919 and turned into a hotel resort in 1926. And this estate is where Nazimova would often host her sewing circles. This is likely just an unrelated coincidence, but I thought it was interesting given that Dietrich would attend these sewing circles and parties at Nazimova's estate. An inside joke of the time, perhaps. Alongside her acting career, Dietrich was also known for her humanitarian efforts during World War II. With the rise of anti-Semitism, Dietrich created a fund with Billy Wilder and several other exiled artists to help Jews and dissidents escape from Germany in the 1930s. And in 1937, Dietrich put her entire salary for the film Night Without Armor, which was around $450,000, towards helping refugees. Dietrich has also said in interviews that she was approached by Nazi party officials and offered lucrative contracts should she agree to return to be a film star in Nazi Germany, but Dietrich refused their offers and applied for US citizenship instead. Safe to say she made the right call. Dietrich was married to Rudolf Sieber, who she had one daughter with, but that marriage didn't stop her from taking numerous male and female lovers on the side, and often writing to her husband about her escapades. Let that be an example to all of you married ladies out there. Don't let your husband stop you from finding true love with numerous other people. Dietrich was openly bisexual, and she is quoted as saying, "In Europe, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. We make love with anyone we find attractive." Dietrich's secretary Bernard Hall also said that she always admitted to me that she preferred women to men, and she also told him, "When you go to bed with a woman, it is less important. Men are a hassle." Alongside this, Dietrich's daughter Maria wrote a tell-all book about her mother, which reinforces the notion that Dietrich had a preference for women. In the book, Maria reveals that her mother used sex as a kind of weapon in her affairs with men, but she didn't actually care much for it. An excerpt from the FBI files conducted on Dietrich due to suspicion she was a German spy also revealed that she had an affair with actress Kay Francis and many other women too. The idea that the FBI were quite literally collecting lesbian evidence about Marlene Dietrich is so funny to me. I guess the FBI and I have a lot in common. Mercedes D'Acosta was another of Dietrich's lovers, and in one letter to her husband, Dietrich described her feelings for D'Acosta, alongside shedding some light on D'Acosta's relationship with Greta Garbo at the same time. Yes, this is the letter I was referring to earlier. It reads, "I saw Mercedes D'Acosta again. Apparently Garbo gives her a hard time, not just by playing around, which by the way is why she is in the hospital with gonorrhea. Also, she is the kind of person who counts every cube of sugar to make sure the maid isn't stealing or eating too well. I am sorry for Mercedes. Her face was white and thin, and she seemed sad and lonely, as I am, and not well. I was attracted to her and brought an armful of tube roses to her house. I told her I would cook marvelous things for her and get her well and strong." In other words, Dietrich was simping for D'Acosta. What kind of good deeds did Mercedes D'Acosta do in a past life for her to be romantically involved with both Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich? That is some god-tier lesbian karma. Alongside this, Dietrich was also reportedly linked to Anna May Wong, as discussed earlier, Edith Piaf, Rosemary Clooney, the German singer Hildegard Knef, and many, many, many others. Maybe that's why she lived so long. Maybe lesbian activity is the elixir of life, and that's why it tastes so good.